And then just one day I sat down to meditate, and it was like a black abyss just opened up in front of me. Darkness. It was the scariest thing I ever came across. Absolute terror in my gut. And then once I went into it, I completely disappeared. No experience, no fear, no nothing, no, I didn't know if I was a human. I just vanished. I sat down to meditate again, and this little blue pearl or blue speck appeared right in front of my consciousness, and I started to be pulled into it. It was like this beautiful cyan ocean of consciousness that was sparkling. It was pure potential, love, and I knew that this was the mind of God. So outside of creation is what I call Brahman, and it's primordial darkness. Consciousness before consciousness became conscious of itself. That's where God evolved from.
And you said, I've fallen for it again. And this ignited a lot of comments around, we are in a prison planet. And some others said, you don't have free will and nothing is chosen and everything is predestined. So let's have a discussion about this. Still have questions? Well, join me live for Wake Up Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll answer your questions, and you might see a familiar face. Together, we're waking up the collective. Thank you for watching. He's back. My guest today is Gareth Duignam, who had an incredible out-of-body experience that we did a video about in December of 2025. It blew up the channel, it blew up the comments, and we decided that we would continue our conversation because we had some time constraint, and Gareth has had way more experiences that he hasn't talked about. So today we're going to dive super deep and have a very interesting collaborative conversation. So Gareth, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me again.
Laurie, I'm delighted to be back. I really enjoyed our past interview. It was great. I read some of the comments, they were amazing. We had such a great time, but we were constrained. We had like 45 minutes and we crammed in so much, and people seem to really love it. So I'm delighted to be back today.
Me too. Well, what I did is I went through the comments and I compiled some of the questions that people were asking, and we're going to revisit that. But you left us with a cliffhanger when you were here last time. And I'm going to read what you said. You said, there's a whole thing of what I do with the Kundalini energy transmissions. I can do a demonstration that your viewers can actually feel like a real transmission that will come through the video. So first of all, explain to me what you mean with a transmission that will come through the video. Like, what is it doing for people watching?
So that is what I do. So early on, I realized that I can talk till I'm blue in the face about awakening, right? I can tell you about it, I can describe it, but you can't, like, words is not it. It's like the pointing to the moon is not the moon, right? It's just, you're just showing the way. So the energy transmissions gives you a direct experience. And that was my whole thing. I wanted to be able to give people a taste of what I was experiencing. And that was my whole thing. I wanted to be able to give people a taste of what I was experiencing. And there was a part in my awakening, I wrote about it in the book, where I was actually on a Tom Campbell retreat in a castle, in a massive castle. There was 100 of us, and I was back in my room one evening, and I asked the larger consciousness system, can I give other people a taste of what I'm experiencing? And this whole process started to unfold. Um, this big, what felt like the life force left my body, my head dropped down. And I wrote about it in the book. It felt like my heart stopped. I literally felt like I stopped, my body stopped breathing, my heart stopped, and my mind immediately went, oh my God, am I having a heart attack? And I was like, okay, this is freaky, but just going to stay here. And then all of a sudden, what felt like a big hand came in and started pushing down on my chest. And I was like, am I having a heart attack? Should I jump up and start moving? And I just stayed there. And then for like, I don't know, 20 seconds, the hand was pushing on my chest. It left. And then this voice, internal voice came in to my head and it just said, now you can share your state of being with other people. And I didn't really know what to do with that. And I sort of like started practicing. I asked it a couple of times, like, what do I do? And it showed me this process of sitting down in a kind of a mental setting and seeing the people that I wanted to send the energy to on the wall. And then I just started, I like just playing around with it. I would invite people onto my Zoom, I would meditate with them, and that's literally how my work started to grow. One person would turn up, then it was two people, then five people, and they were all having a direct experience. And I would be happy to do that today. We can do it at the end of the so people want to stay around to the end of the interview. We can do that. They can have a real direct experience. They can let us know in the comments what they feel. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. So I'm curious, you said that you had this experience with the source energy and you asked how you could show it. You felt it doing some things. After that all stopped, how did you feel different, or did you at all feel different?
I don't think I did feel different. I think there was a lot of stuff going on with me over the space of about 5 years. I was on this crazy roller coaster of a spiritual awakening. Literally 2 weeks before I went and spent the 5 days with Tom Campbell, I had a full, complete Kundalini awakening where the energy went all the way up into my brain. It felt like the top of my head opened up to the universe. And that's what the energy transmission is. So, Kundalini energy is your life force condensed. And in most people, it's dormant or asleep and it resides at the base of the spine. And when you go through a spiritual awakening, you start to change on a perceptional basis, like how you perceive the world starts to change. But there's also an energetic rewiring of your nervous system. And the Kundalini energy is responsible for rewiring. Basically, what happens is you start to perceive the world. Um, Consciousness wakes up through you. It's not the individual. So consciousness becomes aware of itself through your individual um, humanness, right? Your individual unit. It wakes up to itself through you. And in order to kind of fully embody itself on all of these different levels, your nervous system, your human has to be rewired. So new cabling has to be pulled in. So that dormant life force energy that's at the base of the spine starts to rise, it starts to purify all of the chakras, and eventually it gets up into the crown. The crown opens up like the what they call the thousand petal lotus, and you go into unity.
That's absolutely incredible. I want to ask a question about that Kundalini awakening because you did say it's a spiritual awakening. I want people listening to understand that if you have not had a Kundalini awakening, it doesn't mean that you haven't had a spiritual awakening, because there are many roads that lead to the
Yep.
end of that experience of awakening. So, will you explain a little bit more about what you mean by spiritual awakening with the Kundalini and how that might be different for other people who haven't had the Kundalini experience?
Okay. So when I talk about perception, right, it's like most people believe that they are a human, an individual personality. They were born, they're given, that their parents told them that they're male, female, this is where they come from. And what happens is, um, at some stage, awareness starts to awaken in the individual. It literally, it awakens and becomes aware of itself. And they call that self-realization. And the Kundalini awakening is an, the energetic side of the awakening. So literally, it feels like your body is coming into the awakening process. The body is feeling the enlightenment. So you have awareness awakening, and then you have the body awakening with the Kundalini. So some people can have what's known as self-realization and never experience any form of Kundalini awakening.
That's a super, super good description of the differences between the two of them. So I think that that's really helpful. So when you are working with energy and you're trying to impart a transmission to people, what are people coming back to you and saying is different in them after they've had one of these experiences?
Well, I'll just tell you for me anyway, when I started meditating first, I was kind of getting into this state where my mind would become quiet and I was just becoming peaceful. I felt like I was awareness. My, I was having freedom from the individual, right? And I would have these really nice meditations. But when I was introduced to transmission, particularly the Shakti path, it was like behind my eyes, it wasn't just blackness, flat blackness anymore. There was a richness, there was a texture. My body was feeling the meditation. It was like meditation on steroids. It was juicy. When I would close my eyes, there was more going on internally than there was externally. And I just wanted more and more of it.
So, what you're describing, I've heard near death experiencers describe as the void, but you also made a comment on our last interview where you talked about primordial darkness. And is this kind of the description of what you mean with the richness and the texture and the blackness when you're talking about that term, primordial darkness?
No, no, it's the complete opposite. So Shakti energy is the dynamic energy that is within creation. So everything you are seeing is Shakti, is consciousness in manifestation, right? It's energy, it's vibrance, it's like the dance of Maya, okay? And when I say creation, if you can imagine there's a bubble and inside that bubble is our physical reality, which isn't really physical, the dream realities, the astral realms, the gods, the goddesses, the angels, all of that is within creation. So us, we as a soul, um, come from beyond creation. So outside of creation is what I call Brahman, and it's primordial darkness. So it's consciousness before consciousness became conscious of itself or aware of itself, and it's just complete dim awareness. There's no thought there. There's no identification. It's just dim awareness, and it's primordial. So what I mean by that was that's where God evolved from. So when I went through my awakening in the later stages, I started going into states of that are known as samadhi. So it would feel like something was pulling me, sucking me into it every day on a kind of a daily basis, multiple times during the day. I would get this sort of feeling that a magnet was trying to pull me into something. And I would sit and meditate, and it would feel like I was getting to the edge of this blackness over and over and over again. And then just one day I sat down to meditate, and it was like as if a black abyss just opened up in front of me. Darkness. It was the scariest thing I ever came across. And it was like, oh my God, what is that? Whatever that is, I don't want it. But there was a part of me that knew that it had to go into it. And I went into it. And there was this absolute terror in my gut just as I was about to go into it. And then once I went into it, I completely disappeared. No experience, no fear, no nothing, no, I didn't know if I was a human. I just vanished.
So, ego gone too, right? Ego
Ego
gone.
gone when I went in there. No suffering, no fear, no nothing. And then about 90 minutes, there was no concept of time, but when I checked, 90 minutes had passed. My awareness started to come back into my body, and I did this sort of like, oh, where have I been? I'm back in the body. I'm coming back in. The fear came back in, and then I was back in the body, and I was like, what was that. I do not know what that was. I do not want to go back there. It was terrifying. And I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was just this weird experience. And it didn't really seem to happen again, but I was different after it. I kind of felt like part of my awareness was still in that. So it kind of felt like I was walking around as a ghost. Um, like here, but not here. Here, but my awareness seemed to be partitioned in this blackness. And I could kind of sense that everything I was looking at was being projected onto that blackness. So it was kind of like I was here looking at what was being projected onto the screen of consciousness, and I was behind the screen in the blackness, and I was the blackness. So what I later discovered was that my soul, my awareness is a droplet of that blackness, and everybody's soul is a droplet of that blackness. But the next night, I sat down to meditate again and I felt like I was being pulled into something, but this time my awareness stayed. And what happened was this little blue pearl or a blue speck appeared right in front of my consciousness. And my awareness started to be pulled into it. And I went into it, and it was like this beautiful cyan ocean of consciousness that was sparkling. It was pure potential, love, and it had a frequency to it, right? And I knew that the frequency of what I was in was Krishna, right? You know, this beautiful being with the blue skin. I somehow knew that he was the embodiment of what this consciousness was. That's why he was blue. That's why he had all this love. He was the personified version of this plane of existence. And I knew that this was the mind of God. This was the mind of God. I had somehow gotten into it and became one with it for, I don't know, like an hour. And I was like, this is the most amazing place. I never want to come out of this. But I did come out of it. I had to come out. I couldn't stay there. So I came out of it and I was like, well, I don't really know what this is. What happened to me? It was amazing. I know it was the mind of God. I know it was pure love, pure potential. And later on, a few months later, I started to study the Bhagavad Gita. And as I started to study the Bhagavad Gita, I realized that the blackness was what they call Brahman. And then this blue cyan consciousness was God. It was like beingness. So what I learned was that from that primordial consciousness evolved God, this pure potential. So it was kind of like there was kind of like these three circles at the top level of consciousness. There was the nothingness, and if you imagine that we're just going to use circles, right? There was the circle of the nothingness, and from that circle of the nothingness came this pure potential, which was the mind of God. And then from the mind of God, it gave all of its power to the divine feminine, the divine mother, right? So then you have the three of these sitting at the top, right? So the divine mother, I had the experience with her as well, where she descended into my form and she experienced herself through my body. So it was almost like I was experiencing every cell of my body being birthed into a galaxy. So there was like explosions, and each explosion was an explosion of bliss. And this was at a different time. This was like 2 years after these other two experiences. And so what I discovered was that what we are is a droplet of that Brahman. So our soul is a droplet of that. And then we have this free will um, unit, like a spark. So we're both. We're both a droplet of the Brahman and we're a spark of God. Both of them combined down, descended down into creation. And then the Divine Mother, she's like the supercomputer who's creating the worlds for us to have the experience in. So she's the one who creates the virtual reality that we're in having the experience. She's the supercomputer. But she veils us. She's the one that puts the veil on, so we get caught up in the illusion of Maya. But it's her energy, her Shakti, that's kind of coming around the back trying to awaken us. So she's doing both. She's tricking us into believing that we're in this objective reality and we get caught up in it's real and there's so much at stake and everything's objective, and then she's this energy that's trying to awaken us.
Okay, you touched on this, but you went into so much more detail than we did in our last conversation. I'm really glad that you did. You said something I've never heard anybody say before. You were talking about that primordial darkness, and you said, this is the place that source comes from.
Mm.
I've talked to a lot of people who say source is infinite, infinite meaning no beginning,
Yeah.
no ending. So, talking about a creation gives me the feeling that there's a beginning to source. There's a time when there was no source. So, will you elaborate on this a little bit more?
Well, there was no beginning to that primordial consciousness. It just always was. And it evolved into organization, right? It just started to become aware. I had the mechanics behind it. I don't, it's way beyond what my limited little mind can ever imagine. I I had look, this was my direct experience. This isn't something that I read, although I did find books later on that confirmed the experience that I had. This was a direct experience that I had, and I now carry an energy from that primordial consciousness that I call truth consciousness. And that comes through me. It's a descending energy.
Are you
So the
saying
whole
true, TRUE, or truth,
truth, truth,
TRUTH?
truth,
Truth,
sat.
truth.
So what they call sat, chit, and ananda, truth, consciousness, bliss. So so basically, what happens when the soul eventually, what happens is it pops out of creation. So the soul, my soul, popped out of creation into that primordial consciousness, and I kind of stayed there for like a year or two, and then eventually, what happened was the soul then decided to come back in. So as it came back into creation, it created a conduit. And and when the soul came back in, the power of that Brahman or the force could then come in to creation for change. So what happens now around me is that energy becomes organized. And when I meditate with people, the energy then starts to like if you could imagine a magnet pulling the filings back towards itself. So while I talk with people, even people might even while we're talking, they might feel an energy on the top of their head. But usually people who come on retreats with me or they sit on my Zoom meditations, that energy starts coming in. And what it's doing is it's trying to pull its parts back into itself, the droplets. It's trying to pull them back in.
For what reason? Because this is an
Remembrance.
experience.
So it's remembrance. So what I discovered was, right, we come in, we're veiled, and we dream ourselves into these characters. I'm Gareth. I'm a male. This is my job. This is my career. These are the people, my friends and family. And we believe that story, right? But when you start to go through a spiritual awakening, it's a deconstruction of that identity. It all starts to fall away, and we start to remember ourselves as, firstly, awareness. So awareness becomes aware of itself through the individual. Then that awareness starts to look out through our eyes and it starts to see itself in the world. And it starts to go, oh, well, if I'm the awareness within, then I'm also what's outside. And it's kind of like it's not the individual gaining anything. It kind of feels like veils are falling down. A veil is coming down, and you're just remembering more and more of yourself. Then comes unity consciousness. So it kind of feels like literally the edges of what you are dissolve, and your awareness becomes panoramic. It kind of moves out beyond the limitations of your body. And it feels like everything exists within you. The world exists within you. People exist within you. Then it goes beyond that. It goes into that primordial awareness, basically realizes itself as nothingness before it even became consciousness. And then the final stage is if you can get to that stage, it comes back in as a way of helping the rest of humanity. That's what its goal is. It wants to come back in, and then it can help the rest of humanity with that energy to pull its parts back into itself. So that's what happened to me. And it took, I would say, about six, probably about 6 years in total for that to unfold.
Wow, I'm so glad that you're sharing that. And thank you, because this also is a confirmation for me. On the other side, I was also shown how to take the energy of love to bring back in to share with the world. So I love that you're talking about this, because I'm guessing that a lot of people watching a video like this have also had these experiences, because these are very advanced spiritual concepts. These are not for the people that are just beginning to awaken. I mean, it's great if they're listening and it resonates, but these are super complicated spiritual concepts for most people.
Yes. And like some people just might not resonate with it, and that's fine. It's
Yep.
totally fine. Like there's a lot of people will come, they'll do my meditations, and they just won't feel anything, or they're just, they're more interested in Joe Dispenza meditations or something else, and it's totally fine. Um, like I don't normally talk about this in my everyday life. Like, I live in the middle of nowhere. I don't go around going, hey, I live in primordial consciousness, or I just don't talk. I'm a very normal person. Like if you met me out on a walk, you wouldn't even know. My human enjoys walks. I enjoy nature. You wouldn't know there was anything about like this going on with me.
I'm glad that you said that, because sometimes when we have these conversations, people put a perception on that this means good, better, best, and it does not. There is no good, better, best in the scheme of this experience.
Totally.
Okay, I'm
Totally.
going to go back to one other thing you said, because I'm curious. You talked about how when you were in that blue light, you experienced what was that Krishna energy, and you called it a frequency. You
Mm.
experienced a frequency. I've often talked to people who've had near death experiences that experience some type of a frequency on the other side. And the first thing I want to know is, have you encountered, uncovered, or found a frequency in our existence in this human realm that matches what you experienced on the other side?
Yes. Well, okay. So I'll tell you how. I'm trying to think, did it come before or after, and how did I know? So there was another time I sat on my sofa meditating, and I had just been initiated into this mantra, and I sat saying the mantra for the very first time, and all of a sudden, Krishna, the individual, was sat in front of me in the lotus position, stretching, like literally doing this and looking at me with his big, beautiful eyes. And I could feel that he had this frequency of love. I think it happened before. And then when I went into the cyan blue consciousness, they had the same frequency. I was like, oh, that's, I knew it matched. And there was a few times I kind of became like them old transistor radios. This is what I noticed I could do. I could kind of like dial this, this into different frequencies, and I could like think of something, and I could tune into that frequency, and I could meditate with it, and then I could go, okay, now let's tune into the frequency of this saint or the energy of Jesus. And I could feel that they all had their own individual frequencies, and I could tap into them.
That's pretty incredible. So, is there a frequency that we can go to? You know how they, like, the earth resonates at a certain hertz frequency, and there are other frequencies. Is there one that you have found that kind of can help you either get into one of those states, or that just is feels so good from the human experience?
Well, that's what I'm going to do in the demonstration. I'll project the frequency that I'm residing at, and I'll let people tap into that. And
Okay.
I'll just explain because people might go, well, I'm watching a recording. How does that work? So that frequency exists always. There is no space and time. And what you're using that so the frequency is just out there in the ethers. But for an individual, for a human, we go, well, okay, how do I get to it? What, how do I reach it? How do I tap into it? And what we'll do is we'll use this video as an interface for you to be able to tap in. So it doesn't matter if you come across this video in 5 years' time and you get to the meditation, you close your eyes, you will be able to tap into the frequency. It's
You
like
know
a
what I
portal.
might do? I've done this before. Sometimes people like to experience these things more than once. Maybe when you do that last transmission, I'll separate it into its own standalone
Sure.
video so that people who want to revisit it can go back to it again. And I'll put a link in the show notes for that.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to go to some of the comments that we received on our last interview. And in order to do this, I'm going to need you to retell a part of the story because obviously everybody listening didn't listen to the first one. But you had a story where you described an experience where you were shown how time was very different on the other side and how that related to the time that we spent here in looking through a receptacle that allowed you to see and go into the human experience. Well, so tell the story again, and then we'll talk about the comment that you made, and we'll elaborate on what has come up in the comments.
Okay. So when it was okay, so it's like there was all of these different uh stops along the journey that I was going through, and at this particular part, it was kind of around when this Brahmin part was going on for me. I started to be shown past lives, and like I mean, when I was shown them, they were like lucid dreams. I was literally there. I could walk around. I could pick things up off tables. I could interact. I could speak with people. It was like a total interactive experience. And they had a frequency. We're speaking about them frequencies. And every time I would come out of these past lives, it would feel like there was a deep emotional connection. I would cry. I would sob. I missed people there. So I was shown my three recent past lives, and then I was shown this experience where I reside in between my human experience. And when I say 2D, people go, well, 2D is below 3D. I can't explain it, but that's how it felt to me. It kind of felt like I was in this oil painting, and it kind of felt very simple. It didn't have a lot of detail. Everything was just kind of like wavy blues and purples. And there were beings there, but the beings weren't humanoid, and I was one of them. And I was kind of like this little triangular shape. I had a little small head on the top, and I kind of glided along, and the other beings did as well, and they communicated with telepathic chunks of information that would just come to me, and I would get like sentences, paragraphs would just kind of like unpack inside my consciousness, and we were talking, and they were family, but not family the way they are here. So there was lots of things. They told me that this was a sort of an advanced place for souls, that they can go in between incarnations, and they can choose what they want to do in life incarnations. So that was explained to me, and then I was shown this device where I would go to, and they described that when I go to have a human experience, I know that the comment that somebody said, they said, oh well, there is no time on the other side. Well, there was time. There was I had an experience, and then there was another experience. So there was some sort of time, right? But time was just different. It was kind of like, I don't know, it's hard to say. It's like compressed more on that side. So it's like we spoke before about plant medicines, and I've kind of dabbled with them prior to my awakening. And I remember one time doing a plant medicine and like literally closing my eyes and having a full life experience in about 15 seconds. And then coming back and going, oh my God, am I okay? What just happened there? And the person that was sat with me were like, you literally just asked me that 15 seconds ago. But to me, it felt like I had lived a life in that 15 seconds. So that's what it was like there. They explained to me that once I go down the tube, I will have a human experience, a full life. But from that side, it's only 20 minutes. They're still standing there waiting for me to come back. But I've lived
which is
80 something
incredible,
years. It's, yeah,
but also makes so much sense. So the comment that you made was, oh, when you said you looked through
yeah,
the whatever it was, the goggles, and they're like, oh, just try it. It's going to be 20 minutes. And you start going down the tunnel and you start remembering, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to learn how to walk again and talk again. I have to learn to live these 80 years. And you said, I've fallen for it again. But then you
yeah,
said, not really, because I chose it. And this ignited a lot of comments around we are in a prison planet,
yeah,
which I vehemently disagree with from my experiences on the other side. I believe that we choose consciously a lot of what we experience, not every single second. And some others said you don't have free will and nothing is chosen and everything is predestined. So let's have a discussion about this and your thoughts on those types of comments. And I know you've read a lot of them too.
yeah. Okay. So I do believe that okay, so souls on the planet, right? There are new souls coming in. There are medium souls that have been in here. They've done a number of lifetimes. And then there's old souls who are starting to wake up. They're starting to break free. But they're here to help the other ones, right? The newer souls. Because if this planet was just new souls coming in, we wouldn't do so well. Like we really wouldn't. There'd be no one helping one another. So and we're not saying that any soul is better, right? They're just wiser. They've just done it more times. So my understanding is that because I am an old soul, that I've done this a number of times, that when I'm not in the human body, when I'm in this space in between, I have a period where I can reflect on my previous life. I can sit down, I can make decisions to come back and have another experience. I don't believe that happens to newer souls. So what I sense is that newer souls come in, have an experience, come back out and immediately come back in without them having a say in between. They're just being recycled over and over and over again. I think the better that you get at the game, I think then all of a sudden you start to have these kind of intermediate experiences with like soul councils where they'll sit down to you, they'll do a life review, they'll show you where you messed up, and then they'll give you an opportunity. But it's you choose. You can say, no, I don't want to go. I want to hang out here. Um, when I came back in and it was like it was more humor, Laurie. It was more like, oh, I've fallen for it again. Like, I enjoy my life. I enjoy helping people. Life isn't a prison. I believe that I chose to come here. I believe that I will have the choice not to come here again, but I would because I enjoy it and I like helping people.
Okay, I'm so glad that you said all of that. Let's talk a little bit about free will. What is your, I guess, your definition of free will, and how do you think that it works in these lifetimes?
I think we 100% have free will. I don't. Why, if it was predetermined, like what would be the purpose of it? Consciousness is playing a game with itself. Like it's literally falling asleep into these characters. We have the choice to make good decisions. We can choose love or we can choose fear. That's it. Like when we talk about free will, we really only have the decision of yes, no, love, fear. That's it. It seems like it's really, really complicated, but it's like a one and a zero. It's like left or right. That's all we get. So I do believe that we have the free will to choose to be a kind person or to be negative. That's on us. I spoke earlier about us being a droplet of the Brahman, our soul, our awareness. We're also a spark of the Creator. And that Creator gave us free will to have, like, we have to choose to want to remember that.
So if you have free will, do we also have things that are predestined because
Yes.
it aids in the type of experience we're going to have?
Yes. So that's prarabdha karma. So there, if you could imagine, that's life experiences that you chose to go through on the other side. So you sat down with whatever, your guides, a counsel, and you said, I want to go experience what it's like to go through a divorce. I want to go, whatever. And those are like arrows that have been fired before you came into this life, right? And they're going to hit at some stage, and you're going to have to go through them.
Okay, I want to go deeper. I want to go deeper because I think as people are starting to awaken, I think that they can understand and conceptualize, all right, I'm this soul, me, you know, whoever's watching, and I'm going to pick that I want to meet this person, so I have this experience, have this family, have this particular job, have the divorce, like whatever those mile goalpost moments are. And then the rest of it's free willed, and they're just kind of making these different decisions,
Yeah.
right, left, zero, one, whatever it is. People can understand that. But then you have the complexity of the multiple lives and the getting wiser was the word that you used as a soul, meaning that you've just had more of these human experiences. And now you start to change the game a little bit where you're not necessarily coming here just for the experience. You're coming here to, it's, I guess, another character is to awaken, remember what you are, and then help others to awaken or to be in of service.
Yeah.
So if we have all of these different levels in this experience, but we say that we are really just one thing, the illusion of Gareth, the
Yeah.
illusion of Laurie, because it's all source as one thing. And these are just droplets. I think that this is where it starts to get a little bit hard to understand how and why would one source want to have all of these experiences, in your opinion?
Okay, so my book, I called it Waking Up from the Dream, right? So when we go through the awakening, something like it's like God awakens and realizes that it's dreaming all of this. So it wakes up from the dream, but it's still in the dream. You still have to go through loss, love, joy, sadness. You're not like people, a lot of people, they want to have a spiritual awakening or become enlightened, right? Because they want to stop suffering. They don't want to go through suffering anymore. So they want to become enlightened. They think that becoming enlightened, they will be, you know, somehow life will not hurt them. You know, the boogeyman's not going to jump out anymore. And all of that stuff is still going to happen. Your reaction to it is going to change.
Yes.
It's still going to happen. I had probably one of the toughest years of my life this year. I cried more than I've cried ever in my whole existence, right? I'm what, people would say at a very high stage of awakening. Am I free, completely free from suffering? I'm free from psychological suffering, so I don't sit there thinking about the worst case scenario and tormenting myself with my own thoughts. But I still feel, I still love, I still have connection. Um, you're not going to be free from any of that. Would I change it so I could have avoided that last year? I would not. It was totally the most important part of my life, and I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. And I think that's the difference, right? It's like once you get to that realization that it's not about you controlling your life or having it a certain way that you want to have it, it's going to happen, and you're going to be okay with how it happens the way it's supposed to happen. You're just going to live, you're going to be okay with uncertainty.
Well, I think another way to say it is that when you get to this point where you are awake and you are aware that you are the source, having the
Mhm.
experience, one of the light bulb moments for me was understanding that everything was happening for me
Yeah.
and not to me. And I think that's what you were hinting at in how your reactions are different. Do you still get cut off in traffic? Do people die around you? Do water pipes explode and ruin something that you really liked? Yes, all of those things happen. And sometimes you're going, really? This is really happening for me? But with perspective, you find out every time it was just an experience. And if you really understand that your soul cannot be harmed because you are energy that can neither be created nor destroyed, and that the soul really isn't what you thought it was a game of the source anyway, it's an experience that all lends to the whole.
I totally agree. I totally agree. You're still in the game. You still have a human part that's here experiencing this. And it is all about just being a nicer person, loving other people, being kinder, connecting, helping others. Um, yes, you're still going to experience loss, suffering. You're still going to lose money or, or gain money and then realize that money doesn't make me happy, really. It's it's an incredible experience. It really is being human.
So, why do you think Source created this experience?
I think to refine itself as love. I did a lot of study of Tom Campbell's work early on, and his whole thing. Now I know he uses physics, and it's all about entropy, and but it does seem that source is refining itself through us. So basically, when we come in and when we evolve into love, we are the fuel that it uses to keep evolving itself. That's what I feel. We are all it, but we are all individual units of it. But we're all helping the whole.
Well, and the reason that I feel like, and I agree with you completely, that we are refining ourselves in the love is because on the other side, in my personal experience, the state of being that we exist in is love. That
Yes.
source energy is love. And it's a love that isn't like anything that you can describe in a human form, because here you are not a state of being of love. And no matter how much you try to be unconditional love, good luck with that. There's always a condition because you're
Yeah.
human.
Yeah.
So we come here to experience love. We come here to see how we can show up in love. But on the other side, we are that. And so I think that evolution is, could we veil ourselves? Could we forget that we are the state of being of love? Have these experiences, have these bad, terrible, whatever you want to label them, things happen to us, or great, amazing, wonderful things happen to us. And how do we show up? And I think the evolution part on the soul level, Gareth, you, Laurie, me, is how do I show up more in love? Because as you said on the last video, which I also agree with you, there's always more room to show up in love and in kindness. That doesn't stop because we're human.
Well, it's totally. I totally agree. I think we definitely come in and we see ourselves as separate, and it is very much a dog eat dog reality, right? I need to get for me and mine, and this is protected. Um, But as we start to awaken, we start to see that, oh, I'm not separate. We're all made from the same thing, the same consciousness. And it's love. Love is what binds us all together. So, like, from the year that I've just gone through, right, I have realized that having a human experience will do more for us than any amount of meditation, any amount of reading spiritual books. Like, go out, have your heart broke, live life, do uncomfortable things. If you don't like, dancing, go and sign up for salsa. If you have a problem with public speaking, go and do stand-up comedy. Go and live your life, and that's going to do the most for you on a spiritual level. Um, yeah, just being human.
I love that so much. It's so funny that you would say that because one of the things that's always bothered me about spiritualism is that so many people that are looked at as gurus tell everybody go meditate. You listen to Deepak Chopra, I think he meditates like 6 hours a day. Good for him. Not everybody can meditate. I'm not a meditator, never have been. I'm never going to be. I do a walking meditation, which is just merely me trying not to have thoughts of the future or the past, just being in the present moment, which is sometimes still a challenge for me. But I don't think that anybody in a spiritual practice needs to sit and meditate every day. If that makes you happy, that's wonderful. If that helps you to have an astral travel like what you've described, that's great. But there is no one formula that works. There's no one shoe that fits everybody. It's all an individual. What are you drawn to? And I just love so much that you said that the best thing you can do is go out and have a human experience.
Well, it's diversity, and there's all of these different paths that go to the same place, right? You can go and live in an ashram or be in a Zen temple and sit there in meditation. But as soon as you come out of that and you're back in the world, people are going to piss you off. You're back in
Yep.
all your stuff is going to get triggered when you go to your family for Christmas. 100%. So look, I think there's lots of different paths to it. Some people they go in and they work in hospitals and they help sick people, or they're of some service. There's so many different things we can do.
Yes. So that's wonderful. Well, let's end this with the Kundalini transmission that you wanted to share with the audience, if you feel good to do that.
Yeah, so like okay, so it's not necessarily Kundalini. Kundalini has an awful lot of like stigmas attached to it. So it's just going to be a general transmission. You will take whatever you need from it. I think that's the best thing to do.
Okay. And
So
so what do you want everybody to do? Do you need to have your eyes closed? Like, do you need to be in a comfortable position? Like, what do you recommend for people who are watching?
okay, so what I would say to people is instead thinking about what's happening, right? Oh, am I feeling this? How, kind of sitting here thinking of how am I connecting to this video? Don't do that, right? Bring your awareness into what your body is feeling. So drop down and just start to notice how your body feels. Oh, is there any tension in my shoulders, in my back? Can I release that a little bit? And then just bring your awareness into the body and just notice, is there any subtle sensations? Do I feel heat? Do I feel like a warm, fuzzy feeling? Is there any presence? What I'm going to do is I'm going to work a little bit with my hands like this. So if you're looking at me, you'll see me doing this with my, it's just how I open up the energy centers in the system. And you might feel like you might feel the crown kind of expanding a little bit when I do this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull light down into people's consciousness. So you might perceive light, you might see colors, it might just be a feeling in the body. And I want you to do this with your eyes closed, and we're going to do it in silence. So I'm not going to give a commentary when I'm doing this.
Okay.
So we're going to start now. Okay. So we'll do it for about 10, 12 minutes. Okay.
Perfect.
And then you'll hear my voice at the end just to let you know that we finished. Okay. And Laurie, you can meditate with me. So I'm going to do it for you, but it's
Okay.
also you're going to be like the what would I say, the astral entity, right? So I'm going to work
Okay.
on you, but you're going to
Okay.
represent everybody that's watching the video, right?
Fantastic. I feel so
Okay.
lucky.
Okay. Laurie. Okay, we finished.
Wow, that was very relaxing. I didn't think I was going to be able to get that relaxed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like these energies become rapturous. Like when you're introduced to them first, they might feel like, oh, peaceful. My mind was a little bit quieter. But over time, they start to kind of like accumulate in your system and they become rapturous. And it's like, wow, I can't wait to get back to do it. Um, So, I mean, people will definitely be able to pick up from the energy through the recording, but also I do them free. I do them on my YouTube. I do a live one every Tuesday and Friday at like 9 p.m. UK time. Um,
Okay.
Anyone can go on. I live stream it. Just sit and meditate. The live ones are always stronger.
Wow. Well, what was kind of interesting is as I was closing my eyes and I was just trying to get to that place of stillness of not thinking about past, future, just being in the present moment, there was almost like a drawing out. It's almost like if you could see northern lights without any color, just in the movement, but it wasn't movement like the whole entire spot. It was more of like a circle. And I could kind of see that moving in and out. And I just felt like that was probably the frequency that was coming in and out.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody gets something different. I could have 100 people in front of me on Zoom, and everybody will have a completely unique experience. They draw whatever they need to draw from the energies.
Well, that was super special. Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you also that you do this for the collective. So I would imagine that people who are watching would love to find out more about how to connect with you, and you have your book. So tell everybody a little bit about your book, where they can find it, and then how else they can connect with you.
So my book is called Waking Up from the Dream. So you can get that in Amazon, and then it's in an Audible audiobook version as well. And it's me. I narrated it. So yeah, Amazon, I think that's the only place you can get it. And then my website is truespiritualawakening.eu. And I do group meditations. I do retreats all around the world. I do some retreats in the United States, in Spain, Portugal. I was in Lithuania last year, Ireland. I get around. Yeah, so it's a lot of it's transmission based. Yeah, they're amazing. My retreats are amazing. I like
So
to
I'm curious
have a lot
about
of
your
fun.
retreats. Tell us a little bit more about them. So what do you do in a retreat? What is it a retreat about for you?
Yeah, they're fascinating. I always kind of imagine like when I'm in them, I always think about like a fly on the wall looking in and going, "Oh my God, what is going on in there?" They're insane. So I mean, so I give a transmission which is Shaktipat, which is a kind of an ancient tradition where the guru or the master can awaken the life force energy in the aspirant. It's kind of Hindu kind of based. So I received Shaktipat from a master a number of years ago, and I think my Kundalini was already awake, but it just erupted when I received Shaktipat, and that became active in me. So that's what I do. So people come and they receive Shaktipat, and what I do is I touch people on the third eye, just here, or on the knee, and I sit and I meditate with them, and they have kriyas, so the energy starts moving through their systems. They might you see people doing weird movements. Some people kind of burst into spontaneous laughter or crying. I love it. It's weird, it's wacky. I love it. It's almost like people get there and it's like they're given permission to express whatever wants to come through them. Um, yeah, I love doing retreats. I love being around people on retreats and sitting in that energy. It's like a field, and it's kind of dense and rich, and yeah, it's really magical.
So this is the beginning of 2026. Do you want to talk about any other treats that you have? I know these videos live in perpetuity. Skip over this if we're past 2026 when you're watching this.
Yeah, I'm terrible at kind of marketing myself. I'm always real like, yeah, it's one part I don't like. So I do retreats. I'm doing two retreats in the United States in 2026 in Mount Shasta. So that's a real spiritual hotspot. Yeah, so I'm doing two there. I'm doing one in Ireland in May. I'm doing one in Spain in April. Yeah, and there'll be some later on in the year as well. You
Okay.
can see them on my
Well,
web. You can go onto my
website.
website and see them. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Well, I have to say this didn't disappoint, Gareth.
Good.
This has, as usual, been a fascinating conversation.
And can I just say something as well, right? I
Sure.
don't have all the answers, right? I just talk about my own direct experience. I'm not trying to convert anybody. I'm not trying to change anybody's perspective on anything. I'm just coming here. We're having a conversation. You're asking me questions. I'm just giving you my experience. Do I have all the answers? Do I know how it works? No, I don't. I'm just giving you my limited perspective. So
Yeah, and
that's,
be leery of anybody who says that they have all the answers,
yeah,
because the more
totally.
you have these spiritual experiences, the more you realize you don't understand.
I I when I got to kind of the later stages of this awakening, one of the big things is I don't know anything. Like, I mean, I wrote a book, right? And now I kind of look at my book and I go, did I just make all of that up? It's like the whole awakening process just collapses on itself. And it just seems like a story that I dreamt. I know it did happen, but that's kind of where it goes. And I just, my whole thing is come, sit in the energy, have the direct experience, and then your mind goes quiet. All them questions just kind of disappear. That's
Because
what I
in a
want.
sense, none of them matter anyway.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Wow.
Doesn't.
I want to thank you so much for your vulnerability, for sharing not only what you know, but also sharing with people that your life is not perfect. And I think sometimes people have a perception that, you have an awakening and your life is perfect, and it's
Yeah.
not. We're still human. So thank you
Yeah.
for the vulnerability. But more than that, thank you so much for what you were doing to help wake up the collective. We all know how much it is needed.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the conversation today. It was amazing. You've got great energy, great questions. I really appreciate you, Laurie.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Thank you. And
much.
of course, this show is absolutely nothing without all of you who tune in to watch, to listen, and to share these conversations with whoever needs it. So thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
I'm Laurie Majka. If you like stories that open your heart and expand your soul, hit subscribe. This channel is Waking Up the Collective.